Previously on One True Theory.
You were the chosen one, Link. You belong in the child timeline, not the adult, unified, or downfall timeline. But I love you too much to let you keep secrets.
I told you I'd be back, didn't I? You ready for round 2? Because I am. I'm looking at you, Breath of the Wild. You can't hide your secrets from me forever.
Round 2. Fight!
Welcome back, Midnighters, to the second part of the Midnight Geeks theory about when and where the newest game, Breath of the Wild, will take place on the official timeline, and more specifically, where in that timeline it is going to take place. If you didn't watch the first video, then click on the annotation here and be sure to get yourself caught up because you do not want to miss a thing. Trust me, I'm fine with waiting. Alright. So in the last video, I took special care to accurately speculate in what timeline the newest game would be a part of, and we discerned looking at all the most important areas that this game is most definitely in the child timeline. The tech, geography, and canon history of the timelines all just mesh together really well for it. That is only half the battle, however. I had a 25% chance of guessing that one, and though we pretty much nailed it, I need to go deeper and give all of you out there the delicious closure you deserve. In this video, we're going to discern when in the child timeline this takes place and how it can take place in that way. This is both fortunate and unfortunate. Fortunate because there are not a whole lot of games to handle in the child timeline, so most of the work is pretty much already done. But unfortunate because there should be more games in the child timeline, but that's why we have Breath of the Wild, of course. So the first spot in the lineup for Breath of the Wild's placement is also the easiest placement to disprove. There is this little sliver of time between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Yeah, that little sliver right there where the game could assumingly take place. However, it is impossible for Breath of the Wild to be here because these games are direct sequels of each other. It has been proven that the Link from Majora's Mask is young Link from Ocarina of Time, and the last time I checked, this shirtless hunk is not a little boy. He's a man. A big, strong man.
Now you're a man!
Oh, sorry. I got a little distracted. To tie this point up in a nice little bow, these two links are not equal to each other, and therefore Breath of the Wild cannot take place here. Now to link up those thoughts, we have the space before Twilight Princess, but after Majora's Mask. The reason it doesn't work for this period of time is for one reason, and one reason only. Reason number 1. Calamity Ganon, as we've discussed in the previous video, is basically Ganon's spirit before it goes through a proper reincarnation cycle into a physical body. If you don't kill the body and soul, then the soul lingers. In the lore of the child timeline, Ganondorf never got around to invading Hyrule because our good buddy Link here went back to Hyrule and told them everything. Everything from his adventures in Ocarina of Time. And then Hyrule basically minority reported the ish and captured and sentenced Ganondorf to death. Pre-crime department? More like the pre-hero of time department, am I right? Really glad I have myself to laugh at. Despite being put to death, the Triforce of Power kept him alive through his execution, in which he then went to kill all of his captors, and then Twilight Princess happened, so there's no good time there for this game to take place either. So it didn't happen between Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess, and now it's time for the next slot of time between Twilight Princess and Four Swords Adventure. The reason Breath of the Wild can't happen here is because the evolution of technology through the child timeline, but much more importantly, the dilapidated state we see some of the important Hyrule landmarks in during Breath of the Wild. The technology is not like anything we've seen in Four Swords Adventures or Twilight Princess. There is a distinct and noticeable difference. However, it is a passable evolution from the technology we have seen in such games. The more important tabloid of knowledge to remark upon, though, is the state of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild as compared to Four Swords and Twilight Princess. In both of the previous games, the kingdom is still doing quite well. and is not like how we've seen it in Breath of the Wild thus far. I mean, have you guys seen the Temple of Time? It looks worse than I did at my junior prom. With all of this into consideration, this puts the newest game in the only logical place in the whole of the Child timeline and in the whole of the Legend of Zelda timeline in general. Hundreds of years after Four Swords Adventures. As we know in Four Swords Adventures, Link sealed Ganon and the Four Sword for what was assumingly forevermore. However, it is not impossible to think that over the course of the years, the Four Sword would degrade in its magical ability and thus its ability to hold in Ganon. I mean, we get a sneak peek of the Master Sword in Breath of the Wild, and it is so rusted over and it's so old that it looks and feels like nothing more than a rusty broadsword. This would be a very logical step if you think the Master Sword has not been touched in several hundred years since Twilight Princess, since Link did use the Four Sword in Four Swords Adventures and not the Master Sword. So the Temple of Time and the Master Sword were not even touched on in Four Swords Adventures. And we know Hyrule is a pretty great kingdom, but it is not uncommon for kingdoms to fall apart over the years and or ignore old relic and adages they don't feel are necessary or important anymore, which helps to explain why the Temple of Time is in such a terrible condition. They haven't needed the Master Sword in 600, 800-ish years, and the evil it's supposed to stop is sealed away in another magical sword. So why worry about something if it is never going to come back? So with the greatest evil taken care of, the Kingdom of Hyrule probably found itself barreled against an extraordinary amount of normal, everyday conflicts that every other kingdom in the universe would ever have to deal with, which allowed those relics to become old and essentially useless. But why would you ignore something so massive, so powerful, something that saved your kingdom so many years ago? Well, after a while, things can simply just become legend. People always talk about the hero of time who saved Hyrule from the greatest evil, but without accurate records, I imagine people just look at it like mythos, and then Hyrule begins to not worry about it, and if they're not going to worry about it, then neither am I. And with that, I think we basically hit this mark right on the head. The timeline is perfectly placed in the Child timeline, and the placement in that specific timeline couldn't be more flawless. Now we just have to wait for the game to come out so I can play it while I wait for Nintendo to send me my check for having this very correct theory. So, is this theory in the right time and place in your life? If you like this awesome two-party theory, then be sure to give that like button a nice little click. And whilst you're at it, be sure to give the subscribe button a nice little poke too, because it is the most sure way of following along with all of our awesome content here on the Midnight Geeks. We have some awesome Let's Plays, and Travis really likes tropes and really likes teaching them, so go check out his stuff too. Give your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This has been Party God Douglas, and thank you for watching another amazing episode of One True Theory. Have a good night.
I want to do. He's a security bot. He's got to find something to secure. Secure this.
Ah!
Wait.
It's been robust.
To the impossible.
Exploring TV tropes. Ooh, spooky, I'm a ghost. Not really. If you liked hearing me talk endlessly about tropes, please like this video.